the calculus not only of the KGB, but of course the person who gives the KGB its orders, which is Alexander Lukashenko. And Belarusian state media have been very clear and explicit in saying that Lukashenko personally ordered the scrambling of the fighter that appears to have forced the Ryanair jet to land in Minsk. It shows two things, I think. Firstly, that Lukashenko is now an international threat and not just a threat to his own people. And the second thing it shows is how insecure he feels himself to be if he goes to such trouble to detain a single journalist and risk international outrage and condemnation in violating international rules in this most flagrant way. It shows he really doesn't care about threatening the lives of European and American citizens just to get a single person who has been publicizing his oppression of his own people.
The Ryanair CEO Michael O'Leary was just a while ago giving an interview to an Irish radio station, and he said that he believed that there were KGB agents on board the flight that got diverted. Again, what does this tell us about how the Belarusian KGB are operating within the EU if they even manage to infiltrate some of these flights, which are supposedly traveling between two EU nation states?
Exactly right. So we've had hints and some evidence in the past that the Belarusian KGB is active abroad beyond Belarus, but this is the clearest demonstration of that so far. There's a carefully planned operation. It appears to involve Belarusian KGB officials operating on EU soil, as you say, in a carefully coordinated operation to force down an EU flight. So this, again, shows us the international dimension of the threat that this regime presents to the countries around it.
Good morning, Nigel. So do you think that actually sanctions, more sanctions from the EU would work in this instance, given that the EU already has sanctions against the regime and those don't seem to have bared any fruit?
Yes. Well, the sanctions that the EU has imposed are recent, so we shouldn't judge their effectiveness just yet. Sanctions always take time to work, and we need patience in these matters. Secondly, the sanctions that have been imposed so far have been pretty limited, to be honest, and there's a great deal more that the EU can and should do, and indeed the United States as well. These would include, for example, banning flights from landing in Belarus, although it's important to take into account the views of the Belarusian opposition here. If that makes it more difficult for people to get out of the country, we should think carefully about that. There are certainly sanctions that can be imposed on major Belarusian companies that trade with the West. And there's also the question of making it more difficult for Belarus to raise money abroad through bond sales, which is something it's still allowed to do despite recent outrages within the country. So much more systematic pressure on the Belarusian system and not only on the individuals who make decisions. I think that's the direction ahead.
And we have this European summit later this evening, now of course dominated with this incident in Belarus. Do you expect any sort of more assertive stance from European officials when it comes to Belarus, but also when it comes to Russia?
Yes, I think that this incident is so outrageous and such a flagrant violation of international rules. And the rhetorical response already has been so strong that there have to be more severe and significant measures. And if the EU fails to act, it's not only Belarus that will draw conclusions about its ability to get away with things like this. Other countries will be watching the EU's reaction too, and that includes Russia. And we have seen recent examples of the Russian and Belarusian security services cooperating with one another. So we need to look at that angle too. So for lots of reasons, it's absolutely imperative that the EU, and I hope with American support as well, will take a much stronger and more concerted stand now.